I've got a really neat story for you that answers the question, why am I depressed and anxious? What causes depression and anxiety? And more important, what's the cure? How can I defeat this thing? Well, one of my toughest patients ever commuted from New York to Philadelphia to see me, I think because of my first book, Feeling Good. And he told me that he had never found happiness in his life. He'd been, felt insecure and worthless, like a worthless human being, pretty much every day of his life. He told me as a young man he had escaped from Nazi Germany, and he arrived on the streets of New York City penniless, and he survived by shining shoes on the streets of New York City, on the sidewalks, actually. He found that by shining them on the sidewalks rather than in the streets, he was less likely to get hit by traffic. That was my lame humor there. I apologize for that. But he was a really nice guy, he said no one had been able to help him. Now, this was at the time when people first started talking about endorphins in the brain, and I bet you've heard about it, how endorphins are the body's normal opiates. They're just like opium or heroin or morphine or something like that, and that's why what causes happiness, and the idea is that you could boost your happiness by strenuous exercise, and that would flood your brain with endorphins, and then you would feel happy. And a lot of people believed that, although I was suspicious because I had been doing quite a bit of brain research myself prior to going into private practice, and I was quite aware that research on human brain endorphins is impossible, so that there was just some theory that somebody made up and the media grabbed hold of it, and so everyone assumed it was true when there wasn't much proof. But I decided to test it out. So I told this fellow, one of the problems with depression is you don't have enough endorphins in your brain, and fortunately you can build them up through strenuous exercise. And I'd been running quite a bit in those days. I told him I wanted him to start running further and further every day so he could build up his brain endorphins. And I got the poor man running 12 miles a day, if you can believe that. We'll call him Harold. And I said, Harold, how did you feel at the beginning of your 12-mile run? And he said, I felt like a totally worthless human being. And then I said, well, Harold, how did you feel at the end of your 12-mile run? And he said, I felt like a totally exhausted, worthless human being. And I realized that the endorphin thing was a bit of a scam. So a lot of people love exercise. A lot of people say it boosts your mood, but it certainly is not a panacea, and certainly it's not likely to be a cure for depression. Now, I didn't tell you the rest of the story, that he was a very smart guy, and in spite of his depression and the poverty that he started out in, he worked his way up in the world, and at the time he came to me, he'd been incredibly successful. I think he owned several blocks of downtown Manhattan, and he had become some kind of an industrialist. But in spite of all of his fortune, he was still miserable, and it also proves that a lack of money and the presence of money, that does not equate to the absence or presence of self-esteem. So finally I asked him, I said, Harold, tell me why you think you're worthless. What is it about you that is so worthless? And there was a long silence, and he got kind of choked up. And he said, well, Dr. Burns, I've never told this to anyone. I haven't told my wife. I haven't told any of my psychiatrists. It's pretty intensely personal. And I said, well, you don't have to tell me, but maybe if you tell me why you feel so worthless, we could attack the problem more directly. And he said, well, and he started crying, and he said, ever since I've been a little boy, I've had claustrophobia, and the fear of the dark, and I don't know how to get over them, and I just feel that makes me less of a man, and I'm so ashamed, and I've been hiding this from everybody my entire life." He started crying, and I said, my heart really goes out to you, because sometimes people with anxiety do feel intense shame, but fortunately there's a solution to this, and exposure is one of many techniques that I use to help people overcome anxiety. But it's one of the most powerful. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home. And he said he lived in a big home there in Manhattan. And I said, set your alarm clock for 2 a.m. on a night when there's no moon. So it'll be very dark at that time of day. And then I want you to go down into the basement of your house and roll yourself up in a carpet. He said there was a carpet on the floor there, so you'll, with your arms down like this, so you'll be trapped. And leave all the lights off, so you'll be in the dark. But you can have a tape recorder there, and every minute I want you to say how anxious you are between 0 and 100, 100 being the worst, and what you're afraid of. And then you just stay there and just stay there until you're cured. But every minute, dictate out loud into the tape recorder. And this is the second minute and the third minute and that type of thing. And he seemed very unsure that he was going to do this. And he took the train back to New York and called to say that he was canceling the rest of his sessions. And he just left that as a message that, essentially I'd been fired. And he essentially thought I was crazy. He thought this was an incredibly dangerous thing for him to do. So he went to yet another psychiatrist and wanted to report Dr. Burns as some kind of crazy quack in Philadelphia who told him to do this horrible, dangerous thing. And fortunately, the other psychiatrist says, "Dr. Burns is exactly correct. This is what you must do, and I want you to go back and then do this under Dr. Burns's supervision." So he came back and told me that he decided to do it, but he was just terrified, and did he have to do it? And I got him to agree that he was definitely going to do this and let me know what happened. He came back the next week, and he was pretty shocked by what had happened. He went down in the middle of the night. He said he was 100 out of 100 on the scale, rolled himself up in this carpet. He was trapped with claustrophobia. He said his fear was 100, and then he waited 1 minute, and it was still 100, and 2 minutes, it was still 100. He was panicked. He was freaking out. He had every powerful urge to get out of there, turn the lights on, and rush to safety upstairs. But he kept his promise. He stayed there. He started. Then he brought the tape so I could hear it, and then he suddenly said, "What am I so afraid of?" And he said on the tape, I'm afraid that a ghost is going to come out of the darkness and sit on my chest and suffocate me. And that's freaking me out. And I believe that 100% that's going to happen. And in 8 minutes, it still hadn't happened. In 10 minutes, it still hadn't happened. And he's still 100%. He's sure this ghost is going to come and suffocate him. And then he said, and then at 15 minutes, I finally shouted out, "I'm sick of waiting. If you're going to come and sit on my chest, do it now or get lost." And he said, surprisingly, no ghost appeared. And I realized that it was a total sham. And I started laughing. And my fears went to zero. God bless you, Dr. Burns. After, 70 years of failed therapy, I finally found my answer, and I was just so happy for him. I never saw him again after that day. And so, what are the take-home messages here for you? Well, in the first place, your thoughts create your moods. 100% of your depression and anxiety results from what you're telling yourself, not from the circumstances of your life. He had gone from utter poverty and escaping Nazi Germany and living on the streets, probably homeless as a young man, a teenager, to the heights of success in New York City. But he still wasn't happy because he was telling himself, that voice in his head and that voice in your head that says, you're not good enough, you're worthless, you should be better than you are, you're not a true man because you're afraid of the dark and you have claustrophobia, and a true man is courageous and strong and doesn't have fears, Well, I know that men can have fears. I myself have had 17 different anxiety disorders. And so I know that men can be anxious, men can be scared. And that's why I love treating anxiety, because whatever you've got, I can say, I've had that too. And I can show you how to defeat that. But that's the first thing there is it's what you're telling yourself. That makes you depressed, that makes you anxious, makes you feel worthless. And the second thing is that what you're telling yourself when you're down is not true. The depression and anxiety are the world's oldest cons. It wasn't true that a man isn't allowed to be anxious. Men have fear, women have fear, we all have fear, we all have emotions. But he was telling himself, I shouldn't have this. I should be better than I am, kind of perfectionism. And then the third idea is the moment you put the lie to these distorted thoughts, your emotions will instantly change. His recovery took about 15 seconds. He was 70 years building up to that 15 seconds when he finally discovered that his thoughts were simply not true. And then he found his enlightenment. And what a joy it was. I mean, he was a really neat guy. I loved working with him. And I was so happy that we could find the approach that worked for him. Now, the approach that works for you will be different. I've developed or learned over 150 techniques to crush these thoughts that rob you and all of us of self-esteem or create panic or fear or depression or worthlessness. And the method that works for you, that'll be different from the method that worked for him. And there's no one method like exercise that works for everyone. That's just a lot of BS. We all have to find our own journey to enlightenment. And fortunately, there's more tools than you're ever going to need. And if you'd like to explore some of them, you might want to check out our Feeling Great app, where I've trained our little AI, David, a little AI chat that we've trained to be almost exactly like me, using the same techniques, working with you the same way I would work with you if you were here with me in person, and what a joy that would be. But the AI is the second best, but maybe not even the second best, because sometimes it gets people better even faster than I can, and often in as little as a day or even an hour. So check it out. Take a free ride and see what you think. But anyway, thanks for listening today. I put your comments, subscribe to our channel. There's a lot of video, a lot of great treatment for you, or free techniques, free methods that you can use to change the way you think and feel. And when you do, write a comment. And I try to respond to all the comments and all the videos. I don't know if I'll be able to keep up, but I do appreciate if you don't like something, tell me that too. But God bless, and got a lot more videos and a lot more stuff for you. So thanks so much. Bye-bye.